Well, I'm excited to start a new series. I've been hinting for the last few videos that we are starting a new journey. So I wanted to introduce my husband. This is Sanjeev. And this series is going to be all about the homestead. And this is the first one. And this is really about how we found the homestead. Now, this is a journey that's different for everybody, but this is how we found our homestead. And we will go through certain sections and we'll do videos in more details on certain sections. Well, let's get started, and we are going to share our story on how we found our homestead. We started by just asking ourselves, why homestead? That is a big question. It's a different look for everybody. But for myself, I really wanted to grow and raise as much of my own food and then share it with others.
Yep. And I mean, for me, I really wanted to pursue a healthier and more peaceful lifestyle than kind of the hustle and bustle of what we have in Silicon Valley right now.
So this was a big part of us going down this journey, was really reflecting on what we wanted as individuals, and then talking and reflecting on what we wanted as a partnership. And luckily, this has been kind of an ongoing journey for many years. With me having experience in farming and education and teaching people of where their food comes from and getting connected to the soil, and then just homesteading here in our urban house here. We decided that here on our urban homestead just wasn't enough. It was not going to be fulfilling enough. So that's why we decided to look for, a piece of property with more acreage. We really wanted a property that we could just take off and continue of what we're already doing here on an urban homestead without putting too much infrastructure into the property. So that's why we went down kind of this path with this property.
So we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out where we wanted to establish a homestead. We spent the last 10 years traveling around the country. We've visited the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, the southern states, the Northeast, to just try to figure out where we want to look for a property. We settled on Oregon. I mean, we kind of knew California, which is where we live, is too dry, and it's also just too expensive for us. So we kind of settled on Oregon because it has a mild climate, which we like about California, but it's wetter, it has more rain, and it's not so far away either. We need to be able to go back and forth, especially over the next several years as we're establishing the homestead. And, I'm transitioning through my career and, into something more focused on the homestead.
So then once we kind of narrowed down where we wanted to look for a homestead, I really spent a lot of time online and looking at different properties. I would say the best one was Land Watch. That could really give me a better understanding of like what the price range was, what was available. And then from there, I actually found a real estate agent that was in the area. And luckily, the real estate agents can get listings for the whole state. So I spent time talking with the real estate agent because when I first started, I had a pretty wide range of areas that I was looking. We did know that we wanted to be at least about an hour out of a major city. And so that really puts us, say, Eugene or Portland. We spent a lot of time kind of looking around Eugene, and I realized that there just really was not hardly anything on the market within an hour of Eugene. So then I started looking up farther north towards Portland, and then there's the Willamette Valley, and we realized there's a lot of good cities there. It wasn't too far even from Portland or from Eugene. And then we also decided that we would like the foothills instead of in the flat valley. It just was more appealing for us to be on a property that was kind of higher up, that our neighbors weren't super close to us, that we didn't have to really worry about the neighbors, what the neighbors did kind of blowing over onto us. So once we kind of narrowed down even further, our real estate agent could even help us even more. And then we made a trip up there. After looking at some properties, we made a trip up to Oregon to really look at the different areas in different towns. I've been there a few times. Sanjeev was there just a couple of times when we were all together, but never really like focusing on like, hey, can we live here? Is this town good enough? Does this have the resources we need? So we did take a trip up there and look at different properties. And we spent actually a whole month there, and looked at different areas, and it was getting really close to the end of our trip, and we really didn't really find much. So then we kind of broadened our search in the sense of maybe properties that were smaller, or properties that were maybe a little out of our price range, just to help us get a better understanding is like what would we be able to find something in the area. Was our expectations realistic in the price range or on the size of the property? And that is when we came upon the property that we were interested in. So on a rainy day, it was close to one of our last days to really look at properties, and it was rainy. We looked at a couple properties, and they still really weren't what we wanted, and we said, hey, how about we look at this property, because it kind of fulfilled a lot of the needs in the sense of the size. We were looking for 20 to 50 acres. And we haven't, and before that, we saw some properties that were kind of 10 acres. So I really wanted to like walk a property of 20 acres just to see, because we know what 10 acres looks like because that was the farm that we had. But we were like, okay, is 20 acres just way too much? So we saw this property. It was in the foothills. It had 20 plus acres. Neighbors weren't super close, but it was out of our price range. But we're like, hey, let's just look, because maybe what we're looking for isn't in our price range, isn't really realistic. So we told the real estate agent, hey, let's just look at it. So we went. It was a rainy day. We almost got stuck off the driveway, because they're like, pull over by the barn, which was like mud. And it was rainy, and we practically got stuck there. But we got out, we got closer up to the house, and we got out and just walked around, and we were like, wow, it is just beautiful here. And we're like, we could really see that this property could fulfill all our dreams. It was well maintained. It didn't have all the things we were looking for. It was a property that didn't really have any trees, which was really high on our list to have some trees. But it had a lot of pasture. It had a newer home. It had a barn, and it was on top of the hill, which I think was like a big part of how we could feel like, wow, we could really be at peace here and not have to worry about our neighbors blowing their pesticides over by us. And it was a cloudy day, and we were pretty much like in the fog, so like we couldn't even see hardly anything around. And the seller's real estate agent was there, and she was saying, oh, it's got great views. And we're like, who cares about views? Like, what views do we have here, right? Like, that's not really that wasn't that big on our list. But it was really that feeling of like, wow, okay, yeah, it doesn't have some of these things, but it does have some of these other things that we don't have to worry about.
So after thinking about it a little bit, we decided that we wanted to pursue this property. And because things move kind of fast in terms of property sales in Oregon, we decided that we needed to put an offer in. And, at that point, we didn't have all of our questions answered. There were a lot of things we still needed to figure out, both about the property and also just about what we could or couldn't do in the county. So we really didn't know what we were getting into, but we decided to make an offer. And what we did is we put a long due diligence period in our offer. And that gave us, the ability to kind of be serious about pursuing the property, but giving us the time to learn more about the land itself, learn more about the rules in the county, and just make sure that there weren't going to be any obstacles in terms of using this homestead for the things that we want to do.
Well, after looking into the property, and it does have some limitations for what we originally were thinking, but we think that we can really work around them. We looked into different ways how we could kind of solve some of the problems we have. So one of the big things in Oregon is you can't have extra dwellings. And we knew that this house is on the smaller side. And then, if we had, wanted people to stay, or I have a brother or his mom come, it's like, where would they stay? So then we looked into the county. So they do have temporary hardship dwellings where you can put a manufactured home on your property, and that they, loved ones can stay there. They kind of have it's like a 6 months period, but after talking with the county and telling the kind of situation, they say, yeah, you have to apply, but most likely that you would be able to carry on. So we felt comfortable with that. And then, there was some other things about having people come and stay on the property that's very questionable. But we felt like that isn't necessarily going to keep us from teaching people. Maybe they can't really stay the night on the property, but we feel that there's ways to work around that. So we were like, I think this will work. So, and then we had all the other things inspected and checked out, and luckily, everything was really good. And we had that feeling when we walked on the property that this property was really well maintained. The house is newer. It's a modern log home, and from the outside, it looked well maintained. We actually didn't walk into the property or into the house. We the seller's husband has been sick for a while, so she didn't really want any. And then with the pandemic coming, she didn't really want anybody to go into the property unless we were really serious. And because we had to leave, we didn't get the chance to really walk through the property. But our real estate agent was really great, and he went above and beyond to really help us make sure that this property was what we needed. and he went and walked through the property, took a bunch of pictures. He was there with the inspector. So we felt comfortable, and really the house, because we knew the house was newer, also because we have experience working on houses, we were like, it's not that big of a deal to us. Even before this property, we were looking at properties where houses were in really bad shape, or they were manufactured homes. We did determine that we didn't really want a manufactured home, so we were kind of, it was kind of nice to see that this property didn't have a manufactured home. There's nothing wrong with manufactured homes, but in the area, a lot of the manufactured homes were older, so they would have had to be replaced or need a lot of work, and they're much harder to work on than traditional homes. And we didn't really want to have to take that on, so we were excited to see that this was a log home, that it was newer. So one of the concerns, we had was the property is off-grid. It wasn't something we were necessarily looking for, but it was actually more of a concern for us, because we knew that the solar system was a little bit older. It's definitely not my thing, but Sanjeev felt comfortable with it. It's more his thing. He felt comfortable. So, we don't feel that that takes away. And actually, now that it's all said and done, I think it's kind of a plus. It's really nice to not have any power lines, because we are on top of the hill. It would make it hard to bring these power lines, and it would run through the property, and it would be kind of stand out. So we're kind of looking forward to it being off grid. It does have a well with good drinking water, a septic tank. So it's not like we're really roughing it, even though I guess technically we can say we're off grid. I know when I was talking to people about the property and explaining their situation, they're like, off grid? They're like, you're not tied to the power at all? And I'm like, no, like the power line's like, a mile down the driveway to get to the main street. So, and I think other people were kind of excited at first for us, and I was like, I don't know if I'm excited about it. It does feel like it limits me in the sense of like, how many deep freezers we have, or it doesn't have a dishwasher, but those are all things that we could work with, and especially with the new system. We can make sure that we have a big enough system for that kind of stuff. And this is Rosie. Rosie's the baby, and she was whining, so that's why she's here on our lap. Well, we're super excited. We did close on the property about 2 weeks ago, and it was a long process. So we went to go see the process around the New Year's, and it took us until March to close, like mid-March to close. And that has to do with the long due diligence. So we took a 30-day due diligence, and those are like 30 business days. So that's what really prolonged it, was to have these kind of due diligence period, and then just to do all the finance, because it is off grid. Getting a loan was a little bit more difficult, but we worked it out, and we're super excited. We did give the seller like 59 days to stay on the property and get everything together before she has to be off the property. So we wait even longer, even though we are owners. It will still be a couple of months before we get to walk on the property. But we are super excited, and we can't wait to see what the future brings for us. And while we wait, we've just been, gathering stuff and getting social media set up for it. So if anybody is interested, we have an Instagram, and we'll have a Facebook account and a Facebook page and a website, all set up and ready. So when we are ready to do programs, we'll have all that ready. And I've been reaching out to people in the community to get people excited about what we're going to do. So stay tuned. Like this video and subscribe if you want to learn more about how and the way we went about looking for a homestead. We will go into more detailed about different areas in looking for a homestead. I think that was one thing that we, I really want to do, because I don't think there's that much content out there about looking for a homestead that isn't, raw land. So I'm excited to do a series about how to look for a homestead. You liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you very much.